Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome. Good to have you all here. All right, welcome. Good evening. Let me ask you a question. Who here has ever been to Israel? Please raise your hand. Woo! Not bad? Not bad. Okay, second question here. Be honest. Who loved their experience there? Very impressive. Okay, good, good. We're on a good roll right now. So what I want to start with, ladies and gentlemen, I want to try to understand first what it is that you loved about Israel. Okay? What exactly, we're trying to hone in first, understand what about the Israel experience was so special to you. Okay? We lived there many years. So there are many things I can think about that I loved about Israel. One thing I loved about Israel was there were no lines. I thought that was a fantastic thing. In America, you come, you go to the bank, wait in line. Well, that's not Israel. There is no line. Wherever you go, you're first. I appreciate that. That's one thing I love about Israel. Another thing I love about it is I was thinking about, Israel's great for business. It really is. Because if you are a shopkeeper in Israel, you can be comforted with the motto, the customer is always wrong. that really gives you a certain amount of comfort that you don't say yes ma'am, no ma'am. You don't need any of that stuff. It's like, oof me cut. Get out of here. You don't need it. Now I can say this if I lived in Israel, I'm Israeli, I can say this. But I really do want to hone in on what exactly, I can go here all night like that. I don't want to do that. What exactly is it that you loved about your Israel experience? Okay? What is it? I'm trying to understand this. You have an idea?
Rabbi Ingber, I think it was spirituality. Just feel it. It's there in Yerushalayim and it's very strong.
Okay, Ruby's taking the whole class. Good night, everyone. Okay, let's build up to what Ruby's saying. Most people, when you say it first, the first thing they say is that Israel's beautiful. It's beautiful. Okay? And that's true. Israel's a very beautiful place. Now, I want you to look at this picture here. This is the quote from Mark Twain. Okay? In his first endeavor into the Holy Land, a desolate country, a silent, mournful expanse. We never saw a human being on the whole route. Hardly a tree or shrub anywhere. This is the picture. This is the beautiful land of Israel. Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. So yes, Israel is beautiful today. But you got to realize, when we took it back, it was not looking like that. That wasn't the love that we felt. Because it looked like this. Okay. So not the beauty. Well, maybe it is the beauty. Not then. We still wanted it when it was looking like this. So most people think afterwards, they say, I feel at home in Israel. I get that a lot. I feel really at home there. And you see here in our picture here, the shuk. There it is. This is the guy, Yankel. This is the shuk experience. And I tell you, it's a fascinating, but most people, and you hear some people all the time, he'll say, listen, I go to Israel, I can't believe I go there, and the cab driver is Jewish, the shopkeeper is Jewish, the policeman is Jewish, the bus driver is Jewish, everyone's Jewish. It's like being in New York. Now that all may be true, it's home. But I want to understand more deeply tonight, what is it about home that we love? Home is not a house. That's not what it is. What you love about home is, as we were saying before, it's a certain connection to something that is greater than just yourself. If it's your family, if it's your values, you're connecting to something much greater than your limited environment. And most people, therefore, when they go to Israel, they can't always put it in words, but they feel home. They feel they're connecting with something deeper. This is what the sages tell us. Yes, you are. Because what you're connecting to in the deepest sense, you can call it love, you can call it community, you can call it whatever you want to call it. The other term we use for it is connecting to the divine. You're experiencing godliness. And you might not call it that. Not everyone calls it that. Some people will not say, I'm having a religious experience. But you are. Because what you're experiencing there is something greater than yourself. The community, the connection with the people, the connection with the land, it's connecting to the source, the infinite. And that's what the sages tell us, really, is the whole purpose of life. We are here in this world in order to get the greatest pleasure. And the greatest pleasure is to connect to the infinite. How do we do that? We become godlike. We go and are godlike in our actions towards others, how we love other people, how we perfect ourselves, the world around us, and then we can experience our connection with the infinite. That's what it is. Okay? So that's what home is, I believe. Now, if that's true what I just told you, then this should be your picture of home. The desert! Here we have the clouds of glory. The Jews in the desert, in their experience of leaving Egypt, really apparently had everything. What they had an experience of experiencing God. They had the clouds surrounding them, the clouds of glory. Okay? They had the manna, spiritual food falling from the sky. Right? Right? Not as good as Elisheva's lasagna, but bounty points. Ziti. Right? But you could eat the manna, and you could have thought to yourself, I want to taste like Elisheva's meaty ziti. Spiritual food. Okay, so this should be the picture when we think, but yet it's not. It really isn't. Because the Jews, the goal is to get into the land of Israel. We're not supposed to stay in the desert. We're supposed to go, in the beginning, the inception of our existence, into the land of Israel. Here you have a picture of the basic Mikdash, temple, model of it. And what it is in the land of Israel is to go into a place where you're not experiencing God out in the desert. You're experiencing God in the physical world. You see, that is the highest level. When the physical all around you is imbued with spirituality. That's the goal here. Okay? The goal in coming into the land of Israel for us, and whatever you call it, it's fine. But the goal was and is to come to a place where spirituality is palpable. You can taste it. You can feel it. You can experience godliness. I mean, I'm sure everyone here went to the coast of the Western Wall, felt something. You feel something. And the experience of being in Israel is the idea of having a place in the physical world that you can go and you can experience that connection clearly. It's clear. That's why you feel love to hopefully other people around you. You feel a certain connection because the experience of godliness is what you're tuning into. And God's everywhere. God's in Atlantis, in Sandy Springs. He's everywhere. He's everywhere. Good news. Good news. He's in the perimeter and out of the perimeter. Okay? But the point is, when you go to the land of Israel, God's presence is more finely experienced. He's revealing himself. And that was the purpose of coming into the land of Israel. Okay. So now here we go. We're in the desert. We want to come into the land of Israel. And we got a problem. And now we're talking about today. Now where we are. Okay? Let's go to today. We are now in the month of what? What month is it? July. Which is religious fanatics here, I see. Now, actually, before I get to that, let's go back a second. Before I get to that, I want to say one thing. Those who said Israel is beautiful, and it is, I want to show you one thing. You know why Israel is beautiful, by the way? It's because of the same concept. You see, look at this here. Sages tell us, in Sanhedrin, there is no clearer sign of the redemption than the fulfillment of the verse, "You hills of Israel, your branches shall bloom and give fruit to my nation Israel." What happens, you have to understand it's very important. What happens is that when we were not in the land of Israel, the physical world did not reflect the spiritual, because the spiritual had been left. God's presence was not experienced there. The nation wasn't there. And therefore, the physical world didn't show it. And what's happening right now in Israel is that it is becoming more and more beautiful. You know why? Because the spirituality that's returning there has to manifest in the physical. That's what's happening. I remember when I lived in Jerusalem, I used to look out, and there was a certain valley. And it was dry, but I kept seeing in my mind's eye, that one day it's going to be streams running there. Just imagine how it would look when there's more water and the streams running there. And that's the reality of the situation. What happens is that as the spirituality is going to be in Israel, you're going to see it in the physical world. That's an amazing thing. That's why, listen to this. The Zohar says, in the future, the Arab nation will rule over the Holy Land for a long time. But when it's desolate of everything. That's the reality. Okay, this is not polemics. This is just basic history. You look at how the land of Israel looked for the thousands of years that we weren't there, it looked awful. When we come back, in addition to the creativity that we showed in terms of how to build things and how to do things, there's the blessing of the spirituality that's coming out in the physical land. That's what's going on. So let's now, in our journey, head to the land of Israel. Okay, so we said before it's the month of what? July. Tammuz. It's the month of Tammuz, July. Now, the month after this is called what? August. It was logging. You're too smart, no one's answering. The next month is Av in Hebrew, or generally in August. Okay? Now, let's understand something here. This is very important. Every one of the tribes has a month that it correlates to. You can look at the 12 tribes here that Lynette has drawn, and they correlate to the 12 months of the year. Okay? The month of Tammuz lines up, which is generally speaking July, lines up with the tribe called Reuben. And Reuben, unfortunately, was a person who did not reach his potential in a certain degree. He was the firstborn. He was supposed to have double of everything. He was supposed to be the king, and he wasn't, for various reasons. Tammuz is a month that kind of didn't make it. And the next month is his brother, Shimon, who also was the only one not blessed, neither by his father Jacob, nor by Moses, because of various things that he did also. And that's the month of Av. The Kabbalists say that those 2 months were taken by Esav. Esav, who is the antithesis of the Jewish people, those are his months. And that's why in Jewish law, you're supposed to be careful in these months. And I'm just telling you from my own experience, living in Israel, this is when the action always started. Always started. And that's the Jewish law, the month of Av, you are not, if you have a court case against a non-Jew, do not go. Push it off. Push it off, because you're in a tougher time. These 2 periods of time, these 2 tribes are not ideal. They're difficult. And that's when the trouble starts, and it's happening again. And literally, living in Israel for all those years, every time we came to Tammuz and Av, I had a certain apprehension, because it was generally, that's when the problem started. Now let's understand what happened in Tammuz. Now, July, Tammuz, is a Reuben. Now, Reuben means seeing. Seeing, to see. Reuben, see my son. The second one, Av, is Shimon. Shimon means hearing. Okay? What happened historically during this time? This is what happened. The Jews are in the desert. They want to go into the land of Israel. They send spies. The spies are going to see the land in this month, the month of Tammuz. That's when they go to see the land. And their goal was they were supposed to see this incredible land, come back and tell the people, it was amazing, it was unbelievable. The people were supposed to hear it and feel now the excitement of it. And the way it works is when you see something and you feel it, you bring it out in action. You're supposed to say, yes, let's go. But that's not what happened. What happened was, in the month of Tammuz, the spies of Israel went to the land and they saw everything wrong. There was a glitch in their way of seeing the world. Whether it was a problem with their own self-image, the text says they were grasshoppers or nothing. Whether the problem was fear, all the various problems they saw, but they did not see this is the land we're going to experience God through. They didn't see that. And when they didn't see it, they came back, they told the Jews. The Jews heard, oh my gosh, this land's not for us. And it led to action. What was the action it led to?
Weeping.
Crying. It led to crying. It led to saying, listen, let's go back to Egypt. This is no good. We can't come into a land that we're going to experience God. It's not going to happen. Let's go back. And they cried. And the sages tell us that crying is the sweat of the soul. People cry at all different times, right? You cry when you're sad. Do you ever cry when you're happy? Right? Every guy who's married knows that. Right? So why you cry? That's the way it is. You're in tune with your emotions. It's good, ladies. It's good. You're in tune with your emotions. You feel something. Crying is a very powerful experience. And therefore, when the Jews cried now, we don't want the land of Israel, they severed their connection. It became a glitch in the system. The system was now tainted. There was a problem. Again, our goal is to come into the land, experience infinity, experience godliness in the physical world. And it's some place where there's a glitch in the system now. We messed up. And because of that, this day of Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av, when they came back, becomes historically the worst day in Jewish history. I'm going to share with you some of these things because I don't know if you are aware of the amazing, unfortunate experiences we had on this day throughout history. The 9th day of Av. Let's go quickly. Okay, both temples were destroyed on that day. Both temples. What a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. Both temples were destroyed on the day that you cried and separated from the experience of seeing God in the land of Israel. The Bar Kokhba revolt was crushed. 100,000 people were killed in the city of Beitar. Turnus Rufus plowed the site of the temple. The Romans built a pagan city on the site of Jerusalem. Now those are the ones mentioned in the Talmud. So the story's over, right?
No.
No. It's really not. In the year 1095, the Common Era, the first crusade declared by Pope Urban II, 10,000 Jews killed in the first month of the crusade. The crusade brings death and destruction. Thousands of Jews totally obliterated many communities in the Rhineland and France. Same day, Tisha B'Av. 1290, the same day, Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. Expulsion of Jews from England, cut by pogroms and confiscation of books and property. 1492, the Spanish Inquisition. When does it culminate? The Jews are kicked out on what day? On the 9th of Av, on Tisha B'Av. They're kicked out, they drown on the way. Massive losses, they're chased out of the country. 1914, Britain and Russia declare war on Germany. The First World War. Many sages and historians who understand realize that World War II is in essence an extension of World War I. The Treaty of Versailles was created. The Germans were not happy with the outcome of the First War. That really is the World War II. Historically, it's one unit. The Holocaust starts, therefore, on Tisha B'Av also. This is incredible. This is the time that now is set throughout history as a moment where it's tough. Very, very difficult. Okay. The Jewish people now, because of this glitch, they cannot get into the land of Israel. Okay? This generation has to stay in the desert. But the next generation gets in. We get in. How do we do in Israel? Well, ups and downs. 850 years we're in the land. Yeah, not terrible, but there are problems. We mess up. There are problems. We mess up. And because of that, what happens next is we move into a different period. This is called Golus, Galut, exile. I want to explain to you what exile means. Why do we go into exile? What is it? Actually, a famous song right now. My daughter imitates the guy very well. I don't do it so well. The song goes, "You only hate the road when you're missing home." Kind of cheesy. But it's true. You only hate the road you're missing home. The idea of galut, of exile, is, understand this very clearly. What it means is that since we were no longer tuning into the Israel experience when we lived there, we have to leave the land and now deal with that problem and fix it up outside of Israel. Because we're going to miss Israel when we're out of it. When we contrast the experience of seeing God in the world in the land of Israel and the opposite where we are now in a unique test. Let me give you an example. Let's talk about the Jews going to exile in France. Okay, France, for example. The Hasidic masters say that France has the challenge of illicit relations. That's what they say. That they say the French language, is the language of love, you know? They call it the language of illicit relations. The sages don't like the love part. They don't think that's what it is. But it's true! If you think about French, the language, the culture, you know? It's very much like this, you know? Whenever you say it, sounds romantic, say it in French, you know? You know? The Jews now go into France. Let's take as an example. What do they need to do when they're exiled to France? Here's what they need to do. On one hand, they have to experience now a culture that is opposite and different than the experience of Israel. And they have to say, wow, this is not godliness. This is not what I want. And they have to resist the temptation of becoming sucked into the negative aspects of that culture. They have to say, okay, listen, if this culture is acting in a negative way, that's not what Israel's about, and I don't want to experience it. Once we had to leave the land of Israel, our exile experience is in order to resist now the temptation in those lands that is the opposite of the Israel experience. So the first thing is, I don't want to get caught in the culture. And the second thing, which is very hard, it's now also when you go into exile, it's to pull out the goodness that's in a culture. The sages call the holy sparks. The holy sparks in every culture. Maybe in the French, I don't know, maybe in the French it's passion. I don't know. The negative maybe is maybe the positive, certain passion for life. I don't know what it is. But when you go into a culture, if it's America, if it's France, if it's Spain, whatever it is, whatever good quality is there, you got to pull out and avoid the negative. This is what the Kabbalists tell us is the idea of converts. The convert means you're pulling out the quality, the holiness, the sparks of goodness that is in that society. Because something special there, you're pulling it out. That's what you're doing. So we go into exile. The Jewish people, 850 years in the land of Israel, they go into exile. Okay, now, let's understand this now. They go into exile. Where's the first exile? Anybody know?
Babylon.
Babylon. Babylon is the first exile. The king Nebuchadnezzar, bad guy, very, very bad guy. But he's not stupid. He knows that he wants the Jews to be his advisors. So he takes Daniel and he makes him one of the advisors. Now, Nebuchadnezzar one night has a dream. And he's very, very disturbed by the dream. And he wants an interpretation for the dream. So he calls all of his wise men, including Daniel, and he says, "You guys got to interpret the dream." Okay, sure, right, no problem. What's the dream? I don't remember. What? You're going to dream? No, I don't remember it. Okay, but we can't interpret it, remember it. You must interpret it and tell me what the dream is, otherwise I kill you all. This is where it comes the idea it's good to be a king. That makes no sense. What do you mean? You're going to kill us because we know what the dream is? Yes, that's what he says. I'm going to kill you if you cannot interpret the dream and tell me what the dream is. Daniel goes and prays to God. prays to God. He says, Hashem, you're going to kill us all. Tell me, show me what the dream is. And God tells him what the dream is. And he goes to Nebuchadnezzar. He tells him his dream and the explanation. Okay? Here is the dream. Nebuchadnezzar sees a statue. As for that image, the statue he sees, its head was of fine gold. He has this dream. The head's of gold. Its arms are silver. Its breast, its breast and arms are silver. Its belly and its thighs are of copper. Its legs of iron. Its feet is part iron and part clay. In the dream, then, what he sees is a small rock that comes up and smashes the feet. And then the rock starts to grow, and becomes a giant mountain that fills the earth. Now, that would kind of disturb me, right? Like, too much Mexican food, went to sleep or something like that, you know? Why do I have that kind of dream? What is that? So Daniel explains, here's the dream. The dream is the Jews will go into exile. And there'll be 4 exiles. The first one, the head, which is of gold, is Babylon. The second one, which is silver, is Persia, Media. The third exile of the Jews is copper. That will be Greece. And the last exile that we're in now is called the Roman exile, Edom. Rome, which is tantamount to the Western culture we live in, that is going to be the 4 exiles of the Jews. And this little stone that comes along, you know what that is? That's going to be the Jews. That's going to be the Mashiach. That's going to be the person who's going to lead the Jews. It starts like a little stone. He's going to break the feet. He's going to destroy the kings at the end. And the whole thing's going to come crumbling down. And that little stone is going to become a giant mountain and fill the earth. Nebuchadnezzar did not like the interpretation too much, as you can well imagine. Right? He tried all different things to try to avert it. But that was the interpretation. This is what we're going through. The 4 exiles, we're in the 4th one right now, called the Roman exile, which is tantamount to Western society, as we'll explain later. Now, I have a question for you all here. This is very interesting, it's very nice. But when you think of the difficulties we're going through now as a nation, what do you think about first? Who do you think about first? If you look here, Josh says to us an amazing thing. Why is his name Yishmael? Why is the father of the Arabs called Yishmael? You thought that meant God heard the cry of his mother and answered. That's not the reason. Because in the future, God will hear the cries of the Jewish people because of what the children of Ishmael will do. He's called Yishmael because he's making us scream. We're screaming our guts out, and God's hearing us because of what he's doing to us. Wow. Look what it says here. When Yishmael will fall, when the Arabs will fall at the end of days, then the son of David will arise, who is a descendant of Isaac. Texts say that the only time the Jews will come to their full fruition is at the demise of the Arab nation. So I'm confused. Why in the world are they not mentioned as the 4 kings? The Arab nation is persecuting us. I want to tell you what it says in the Zohar. The Zohar says there was no suffering as great as we've had under the Arabs. And the Zohar also says that the greatest hatred that was demonstrated to us was through the Arab nation. That's what it says. And I don't just quote a verse. We see it. We see what's going on. What's going on is unbearable, and it is serious. And yet, in the vision of Daniel, the Arabs are not included. Why not? Why are they not the 4th kingdom? I don't get it. Now, what I'm about to explain to you now, I'm going to give you 3 different answers. All three answers are going to be extremely crucial. Okay? They're going to show us a whole different way of understanding our current events, what's going on right now. They're all three true. We need to understand, why are the Arabs not mentioned as we're living in the exile of the Arabs? This is the exile of the Arabs, apparently. We're suffering through the Arab nation. Why is it not mentioned? Let's understand this. Before you start reading, let me give you a little background. I'll quote you the Zohar. Zohar says as follows. It says that when Sarah said to Avram, "Take my handmaiden Hagar and have a child with her," that opened up a very, very problematic stage in our history. It gave the Arabs a chance to go in, enter into our universe, and affect us dearly and seriously. At that moment, it was a terrible moment. Yishmael is born. Yishmael at first is not acting properly. God says to Abraham, "I have good news for you. You're going to have a son. Another son. Who's that going to be? Isaac, Yitzchak." What did Abraham say? He said, "Lu Yishmael yichel v'necha." He said, "God, that's wonderful, but I just wish that Yishmael would be a righteous guy before you." He clung, our forefather, Avram, he clung to Yishmael. He loved his son Yishmael. He loved him. And he prayed for Yishmael. And God said, I heard your prayer. Okay, Yishmael will live, he'll be all right. And that merit of Avram praying stands for Yishmael. Now furthermore, Yishmael then does something. He has a circumcision. Right? He circumcises himself. And when he does that, that's another thing that he's doing. The Arabs, we've got to be honest, there are certain positive things that they do. Those who have been in experience of sometimes Arab cultures. My brother traveled to North Africa, and he told me that the Arabs would welcome him in for 3 days. They had to welcome. They learned Hachnos Orachim, welcoming guests from Abram. 3 days, you're welcome. The 4th day, we can kill you. But 3 days, you're in. You're good. He always left for the second 2.5 days. But they had certain things they learned. Now, Zohar says as follows. It says at that moment, the angel who was in charge of Yishmael started pleading with God for 400 years. That means from the point he's born until we leave Egypt, saying, what is the reward for someone who is circumcised? Doesn't he have a part in you, God? God said, yeah. So the angel says, then why does Yishmael not get the same thing as Isaac? Why doesn't he get it? He's also circumcised. So here's what God said. At that moment, what God did was, he made a switch. He said, okay, God will distance Yishmael from the upper realms. Yishmael is not going to go and be the same as Isaac, even though he's also circumcised. And he gave them a portion below in the Holy Land. Okay? At this moment, God gives a place to Yishmael in the Holy Land, and in the future, Yishmael will rule over the Holy Land while it is barren. As his milah, his circumcision, was considered barren. He didn't do it right. All great intentions. And he will prevent the Jews from returning until his merit is repaid. Wow. Yishmael has some kind of merit. Let's understand more about Yishmael. Here's what it says he will be. Here is the promise that the angel tells. And he shall be a wild ass of a man. Nice guy. His hand shall be upon every man, and every man's hand upon him. He shall dwell in the face of all his brethren. What does that mean, his hands on everybody? You know what the sages say? He will be a thief. And you know what kind of thief? A thief of people. Oh, a kidnapper. You know that one. That's what it says. He's hailed on everyone. He's fighting wars. This is not polemics here. The Arabs have two claims why they say the Quran is true. One claim they say is because look at all the wars we fought. And we won, according to them. That's what they believe. So their hand is on everyone. And the hand of everyone is upon them. You know what that means? You still need them. You know why you need them? Oil. That's right. You still need them. Everyone needs them. And they're on the face of everybody. But what does this mean, a wild ass of a man? Think what an amazing thing here. In Hebrew it's called a para-adam. A para-adam is a wild ass of a man. And the sages tell it like this. From the side of Abraham, he's called a man. Adam. And from the side of his mother, who was an Egyptian, he's called a wild donkey. If you look at the way the Arabs function, you can see this. You see, the Arabs, in one sense, they believe in God. They talk about one God. That's from Abraham. That's belief. That's a merit for them. You gotta understand, it's a merit for them. They understand there's one God. But they're wild because there's no control how it works. We believe in one God. There is a way that you function. There's commandments, things you have to do. Their belief is uncontrolled. We believe in God and we'll blow everybody up to show the point. This is who it is. So, on one hand, he's got his own merits too. He believes. If you go, sometimes I go when I'm at an airport, and sometimes, you can try to find a corner I could pray. And I can see that who's been there before, who's found the same corner, as me, is a Jew or an Arab. I can see something that they were lying down, or something. I can see a sign somebody was there praying. So they have some merit in their own. We got to face it. Here's the last part we understand in this. When first Hagar, Ishmael's mother, gets pregnant, so she starts showing off to Sarah. Sarah's a nobody. Sarah's nothing. And Sarah realizes the problem. Sarah afflicted Hagar. Nachmanides says the following. Sarah sinned with this. And he says to Abraham because he didn't stop her. And Hagar was given a wild son to afflict the children of Abraham and Sarah. Whoa, ladies and gentlemen, this is very important to understand. The first thing you have to realize is that Ishmael has some merits. Through Abraham's prayer, through his circumcision, through what Sarah did, through his belief. And therefore you got to know one thing. Although we need to fight him physically, we also need to fight him spiritually. Spiritually, we need to be more righteous. Spiritually, we need to bring out what we're about. Okay? We got to proclaim there's one God in the world too. We got to blow people up. We have to come back. There's a spiritual power of Ishmael. And the first answer why he's not mentioned in the four kings is this. Because those four kings stole the thing from us. Those four kings, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, they would never have anything if we didn't step out of line. They took what we were doing. But Ishmael has a merit of his own. It's not from us. It's because Ishmael is the only other nation that has God's name in his name. We are Yisrael, straight to God. Yisrael. And they're Yishmael. They have God's name in their name. You've got to be careful. And I want to say one other thing about just what's happened now also. I want to be very, very clear about this. The Arabs use civilians as human shields. And that puts us in a very hard situation. Okay? Okay, the Israelis, when we go and we drop various attacks, we are trying to pinpoint where to hit and not harm people. And we do that because we have a tremendous sense of morality, and we also are afraid how the world's going to condemn us. I want to tell you one thing. The obligation of every nation is to stand up for righteousness. And if a society goes and votes in a terrorist organization, we are allowed to fight them full out. You understand this here. The innocent Palestinians have to go and say, we don't accept what you're doing. You got to be out of here. And if they're backing it, then unfortunately that's casualties of war. But that's because if you support that philosophy, you become one with that. That, ladies and gentlemen, is extremely different than what happened with this terrible tragedy with these people that killed this 16-year-old boy. That's beyond unacceptable. That's not our way. See, that's two different things. I don't want to freak us out, but if Sarah, the righteous Sarah, is blamed for afflicting Hagar when she had a right to be, we cannot go and in any way act immorally and go kill someone who has no connection as far as we know with that. Otherwise, we can go in. And the reality is what's happening around, I'll be very clear about it so you understand. Israel's going to probably do a ground attack soon. And ground attacks, and we've seen this in Israel before, what that does is it endangers our people because they go from house to house. And I want to tell you, as an American and as an Israeli, in America we would never stand for that. In America we would have flattened the place. No, we would have flattened the place. Because what happens is right now the terrorists are part and parcel of that experience. So first of all, that's unacceptable, that's war. But as far as how we act towards other people that are not proclaiming war, we have to act with the highest morality. Because we've got to beat Yishmael not only physically, we've got to beat him spiritually. One hooligan or 6 hooligans, has given the excuse to the world, but it's a bad excuse. Okay. Before I do this next 2 answers, questions, comments, thoughts on what I'm saying so far? Yeah.
When you said we need to withdraw the sparks of holiness from the different countries and cultures, for what purpose? For the spark itself, for the country, for our own benefit?
Great question. Everything in the world could be used for good or bad. Everything. Basically, you could take food, you could eat food in a way that gives you the strength to do a good thing. Eat food, use it for a bad thing. Okay? How you use things in the world is how you affect the world. When we bring those sparks back in, what we're doing is we're saying that everything in this world has a purpose that can be used for a greater good. It's fixing not only the Jewish people, it's fixing the universe. It fixes the whole universe, it fixes the world. It now says that, yes, there's holiness here that we're bringing into the system that was lost.
So when we want to elevate the entire world, does that part of that society elevate the rest of that society that
hopefully
that remains?
That's, by the way, why Solomon married 1,000 wives. What was he doing? He was basically, every wife he was marrying was a princess of a country. She'd go back and teach about Judaism and then accept the 7 laws of morality at least. So yes, it's supposed to affect by us getting our act together and moving everything towards a spiritual purpose. It's going to affect the entire universe. Yes, it will.
When you think about Arabs, you think about Arabs or Muslims in general?
Good question. Give me a minute. I'll get to that. Okay? I'll get to that. I think I know where you're going. That's where I'm going. So we're going to the same place. All right, good. So again, 4 kingdoms. Help me out. Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome. Shmuel is not there. Why is he not there? First answer is not there is because that's what they got from us. Shmuel's got his own power. We got to be careful. The second answer, I need to give you a moment of warning, okay? Because this is going to get a little bit heavier. A little bit heavier. I got to give you a warning, okay? What I'm about to tell you now is something that I am not predicting the future. Anybody who comes along and starts reading verses to you from the prophets and says, this is what will happen at the end of the days, he's not saying correct. He's wrong. Let me explain to you why. Because although the prophets do speak about a cataclysmic war at the end of days, which we're going to see right now, called the War of Gog and Magog. Christians have taken that idea also, in their own book have tried to spin on that. But although our prophets discuss it in detail, there are a few things you need to know. The first thing is that there are two ways the Mashiach could come, there are two ways the war could come to a point of clarity. One is in a warlike manner, and one is a more peaceful-like manner if we earn it, if we merit it. Point one. Point two. Maimonides says, if you try to read the verses now, you try to explain them, you will not understand them until afterwards. When you look back, you'll understand how all these verses came true. But when you're in the middle of it, you won't. You know why you won't? Here's a very important principle. Because we have free will. See, we can change the way these things play out based on how we act. Therefore, there is a statement in the Torah, in the Talmud, that God considered making one man called Chizkiah the Mashiach, and to consider the war that he fought before as being that final battle. And I want to tell you something amazing, therefore. I don't know if this is true, but it's possible. It is possible, therefore, that at least one of these wars, cataclysmic war at the end of history, Gog and Magog, may have been World War II. I don't know. It certainly could fit into the category for many, many reasons. It could have well happened. So what I'm going to tell you now, I don't want you to freak out. I want you to go home and, they have the thing duck and cover, when you sort of,
Duct tape.
What? Duct tape. I don't want you to go home, I don't want you to hide underneath your bed, because I'm not saying it has to happen this way. But we're now going to understand what it happens at the end of history, what's going to happen, and it may play out this way, it may not. We don't know 100%. So don't get nervous. Hopefully it's going to be good. We have free will. We can change the way it happens. It could have already begun. It could be at the tail end of it. I don't know. But it's important to understand what the prophets say, because it's going to play out in our situation right now. Let's go. Before you read this. So now, it says, there is a king named Gog from a northern country. We don't know exactly which country it is. He gathers together with him other armies. Meshech, Tubal. Those are actually, we know some of them are European countries. Yeah, we do know. Alvin says that clearly. Some European countries. He gathers them together, along with Persia, Cush, and Phut. And they try to conquer the land of Israel. This is now a mass movement. He's getting all the nations of the world against us. All of them. There are other ones I haven't mentioned here. Turkey and other ones. But he gathers the nations of the world together, and they go to Israel to fight, to destroy us. They're going to go 3 times. The first time they go, in the middle it says, every man's sword shall be against his brother. What the heck happened? What happens is, these guys get an army, and they go to kill us. And what happens is, when they get there, they look at each other and say, wait a minute. Wait a minute. We're going to kill this infidel, the Jew. You're also an infidel. See, these guys are the Western civilization, what's called Edom, Rome. These other people, Persia, Cush, Phut, those are the Arabs. And what happens is, when the War of Gog and Magog happened, the first thing they do is they take the enemies of the Jews from, we'll call it Rome, whatever that represents, and they combine with the Arabs. And they come to kill us. But what happens is they turn against each other. Because they say, we're going to kill the infidel. You're also an infidel. We don't like you either. They say, we're little Satan. In America, the Arabs say is the big Satan. We're also infidel. According to them. So this whole thing breaks apart. That's what it is. It breaks apart. And And now I can explain to you what the vision of Daniel was. Remember I said there was, first one was gold, who was that? Babylon. The second one was silver, who was that? Persia. Third one was copper, who was that? Greece. And the last one was what? Iron, that was who? Rome. But it said iron and what else? Clay. And iron and clay don't blend together very well. In the end, the feet are iron and clay, because in the feet of Mashiach, Ikvus of Mashiach, the final stretches of Mashiach, the Rome combines with the Arabs together against us. And that's what this is talking about. And then they break apart because they can't connect either. And the first attempt of this unity between this group falls apart. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why the Arabs are not mentioned is because they are mentioned. They're mentioned when they're part and parcel of this very evil alliance. This is important for us to know right now also, because you got to realize that what's going on in our world right now is the supporters of the Arab agenda from the Western world are a tremendous problem for us. This represents that combination. You see it in Europe in certain places already. You see where it's not, it's coming this combination of these two cultures, but that turns against us. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say another thing. We should pray. We should pray that America, as Moshe Feinstein said, Medina Chesed, which has been the nation of kindness to the Jews, does not get caught up in any of this stuff. We've got to pray for that. Okay? Got to pray for that. Second answer, why he's not included, is included. He's included, the Arabs are included when they're part and parcel of this evil alliance. Now the third answer, if you haven't gotten concerned till now, is even more concerning. But at the end it's going to be good. I'm going to be happy at the end. Do a little tap dancing and stuff at the end. Over. That's why I started all the jokes. I knew it was getting heavy. So now, the last one. Uh-oh. Before you read it. Okay. I'm getting used to this thing after a minute. Don't press it until you're ready. Now, the first time that Gog and Magog comes up against Israel, they don't make it into the land of Israel. They don't get there. They fight amongst themselves. They come a second time. The second time God makes miracles and the thing falls apart. The plagues, and they leave. They get to Israel, but not to Jerusalem. The third time, Rav said, Talmud Sanhedrin, the son of David will not come until the evil rulership was spread over Israel for 9 months. Wow. Getting heavy. Getting very, very heavy. What's 9 months? Pregnancy. The sage is called Kehilla Mashiach, the pangs of birth. It's a hard time. It's a hard time, but it's going to bring birth to the new system of the world. Here it is, guys. Easy when you read it. Okay? This is Zechariah. This is the prophecy of the last time that Gog and Magog come up to Israel. They'll be there, but in the end, they will be destroyed. This is how it goes. This will be the plague with which Hashem will strike all the peoples that have organized against Jerusalem. Each one's flesh will melt away while he's standing on his feet. Each one's eyes will melt away in their sockets, and each one's tongues will melt away in their mouths. What does that sound like?
Stephen King movie.
And the verse says here, Zechariah, then Hashem will be king over the land. On that day he will be one, and his name will be one. The third time that it happens is the big one. It's the big one. And that's the time where, in the end, we're going to see the truth, but it's going to be a rough ride. Now, how the Arabs get involved? This is the last one. So, hold on. The way the Arabs get involved is that I told you before there are 4 kingdoms. There's Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. Now, wait a minute. Does anyone know where Persia is?
Iran.
The sages tell us that Iran is the Arab connection at the end. Iran is the Arab connection at the end because Persia is Iran. And the Talmud says, at the end of days, the ones that will be remaining will be Rome and Iran and Persia. Brace yourselves. In the year the Mashiach will be revealed, all the nations of the world will fight each other. The leader of Persia, Iran, will contend with the leader of Arab. Arab is probably Saudi Arabia. I added that. Saudi Arabia. The king of Arab will go to Aram, which is probably present-day Syria, to consult with them. The Persian leader will then destroy the world. All the nations will tremble and shudder and fall on their face. Does it get better? A little bit. And their pain will be as labor pain. Israel will shudder and tremble too, and say, where can we go or come? And God will say to them, my sons, don't fear. All that I have done has only been for you. Why are you afraid? Do not fear. Your time of redemption has arrived. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the key. First, when Netanyahu says, keep an eye on Iran, he's right. I don't know if you got this, but keep an eye on Iran. You don't want to support Iran because Iran is the one the Talmud says at the end, and Medrash says, and the Zohar says, is the one that is going to create the greatest atom. And it's scary. It's frightening. I understand. But I want to just tell you one thing. Read the last line. Read the last line. Don't be afraid. I've done this all for you. Look, I destroyed the world for me. Let me destroy the world. That's for me. Let me explain what that means. What did we say in the very beginning? We said the whole point was for us to go into the land of Israel to experience a way that we see God in the world. Let me tell you something. There is no way after this experience we will not all see God clearly in our lives. That's what it's about. All of the exiles and everything we're going through is in order to go and to connect us. It is not to harm us. Don't be afraid. It just means your time of redemption has arrived. I mean, my brother lives in the old city. I called him up one time when things were going crazy in Israel. I said, how's it going, Sviari? He goes, oh, it's going great. It's going great. It's better news. It's not going great to me. He says, yeah, the thing's falling apart. It's exactly like it says in the Medrash. I says in the Zohar. It's all playing out. It's scary. It is scary. But the final line is, don't be afraid, because that's what the whole purpose is, to see that it's not Iran, and it's not the President of the United States, and it's nobody. It's God running the show. And when we go into the land of Israel, you have a moment. You see the Western Wall, and you say, oh my gosh, look at this place. I feel God here. I feel something spiritual. And we lost it. And now we're around the world. We're spread out. And this is all coming in the very end to make us have that experience. And when we experience, not only us, everyone experiences it. At that moment, everyone's going to know the reality of the world. We got to stay strong right now. You got to stay strong right now. Okay? You got to pray for the land of Israel. You got to pray very, very strong for the land of Israel. You got to pray that the pains of Mashiach should not be too hard. You got to pray. You got to try to be righteous. Out-merit the Arabs. That's what you got to do. Also, what you got to do is not to be afraid. You got to realize the whole thing is for us to be able to see the way the world really is. There's a God running the show here, and everything else is an illusion. Let's try to see that and understand that. Questions, comments, thoughts?
When they say destroy the world, what do they mean by world?
Well, so obviously it can't be the whole world because the people are still talking. But it probably means they've done something very, very cataclysmic.
Because if they're going to take over Israel for 9 months, they can do a lot of damage in 9 months.
So there is actually another verse which I didn't quote for you in the prophets that says that Zion will be a refuge. So Jerusalem is going to be all right. But it's going to be scary. It's going to be scary. But yes, you got to understand. So what they're going to do, we don't know exactly. I showed you the verse in Daniel, which is very frightening. But again, what Arabs, what Iran will do, I don't know exactly. It can't be literally destroying the world because we see the world is still here. The Jews are here, the people, the nations of the world are still there. But it will cause great, great havoc. And we have to understand that we don't need to be afraid of that. We need to try to see through the illusion of that and see how it is. Yeah.
What is the spark that we're pulling out of the U.S. and whether to not be like something bad or to do something good?
I think America, I mean, this is my own opinion. I haven't seen this in place. I think America has a quality of idealism. It's something that's, I think, a special thing. I think America has a quality of a certain ideal of what you could do. You're not so limited. It was built on idealism. We're going to create a nation that's going to be different. So I think there's a certain quality of America that holds an idealism, and I think that's something that I personally, I'm not saying I haven't seen this abroad any place, but I feel that you could bring out. I sometimes find that even with people I know that are religious, listen, hold yourself, you could accomplish, and sometimes people are tainted in that area. I think that may be one of the good qualities of America that we could learn from.
It's very nice that at the end of the day it's working to shape. In the meantime, you're talking about a phenomenon in which our sons may be killed. How can you say don't worry, don't be afraid? I mean, this is now.
So again, I'm not saying that it's not real and it's not painful. I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying that at all. But the reality is that I think everything in life is a question of how you approach it. We have the famous song, the statement of Rabbi Ingber, the whole was a narrow bridge, it means not to be afraid. That means that really, yes, from a Jewish perspective, and I want to be very clear here, even if a person dies, in Jewish belief, we're not over. And I know it's a very grand thing. And I understand that I've shied away from this topic for a long time. I'm talking about it because it's real right now. I got my kids in Israel, and I'm calling my kids up, and they're in bomb shelters. I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm saying everything in life, even a person is facing the worst situation, there is a point that we say that, do I think that this is to destroy me? Or is God still love me, and am I going to be okay? Now, being okay doesn't always mean you get what you want. I'm not saying that. But in every struggle in life, how do you approach it? A person lives in any situation that's certainly a life and death situation. Do we look at it and say, oh my gosh, I'm being destroyed, I'm being wiped out? Or do we say that even though this is so painful, I somehow, some way believe, whether in life or afterlife, that God is going to be with me? That's a very Jewish concept. That's a fundamental idea. Now, and it's hard. I'm not being cavalier about it. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that at all. It's not easy. I'm trying to just have us get our bearings on the situation. Somebody today called me up, Dr. Weinstein told me that he put on, I added to this morning an app, Red Alert app, that you can have on your phone that it will alert you when there's an attack on Israel. I think it's a brilliant idea, because you're sitting here in America, and then the rabbi's talking about things. No, this is not philosophy. This is real. This is real. And what we have to do is to call out and to be mishtadef, to participate in the pain of the Jewish people. I'm not being cavalier and saying you don't. I'm just saying bottom line is that yes, I do believe no matter what happens, that even in this situation and even in that situation, yes, I do believe that we're going to come out okay. I do believe that.
So the purpose of all this is to connect with Hashem, right?
Yes.
We're supposed to connect. Is there any hope that we can connect before all this happens?
Yes, and as I said to you before also, that's why I introduced, I'm saying this can come out in many, many, many ways, okay? It doesn't have to be the way you're reading it as the cataclysmic event. It doesn't have to come out that way. So I prefaced that by saying that. I'm just saying to you, this is...
Again, I don't know if
What?
You just hear about cataclysmic.
Oh. So I said earlier, there's many ways that things can play out. That's why, and that's why I'm there to this topic before in public, because it's frightening, and Maimonides says that you're never going to understand it until after it's done. So people will say, well, this was going to happen, that's going to happen. Nobody knows. It maybe happened already. Maybe it was the Holocaust. Maybe it was. Is that a crazy philosophy? No, it's not. Is the Mufti's combination with Hitler possibly this? Maybe it is. I don't know. I could find many ways to understand it, and all of those can be true. So yes, we have the ability through our actions to change the path of how it comes out in a peaceful way, and even if it comes out in a non-peaceful way, it doesn't have to be the way we're imagining it right now.
To mitigate a little bit.
100%.
So what, I know not the 91st Psalm is the protection Psalm. I was telling this young lady, the 91st Psalm is for protection, which probably, I say it every morning before I leave my house. But what else can we do specifically, and that's where I think we have to rally, to do, what can we do specifically to try to mitigate what doesn't look like a good situation?
All right, here's the thing. First of all, prayer. I'm going to be saying a Tehillim in a second, a Psalm. Prayer. Prayer is crucial. Prayer is now is the time you got to pray. You got to pray. You got to pray every day, thinking about Jewish people, the state of Israel. Prayer is crucial. Now again, if you're not a big prayer, you know, make up your own prayer. You want to read a Psalm? Read a Psalm. If it doesn't fit for you, then say it. Just say it. You've got to talk to God right now. First thing is prayer. Second thing you have to do like this, and this is what I would recommend. Every person, since I told you the first part about the merits of Yishmael, we've got to out-merit right now. We've got to go and act even more righteous. We're already far more righteous in terms of what they do. That's not a question. We got to take a step up. And therefore, I believe what I'd recommend during this time is called Eis Sara Yaakov. It's a time of suffering to the Jewish people. You've got to figure out, I want to take one thing, not 10, not 20, not even 2. Take one more thing that I am going to do that I was not doing yesterday. That's what you got to do. Because remember, we talked about this on Yom Kippur very often. God doesn't expect you to go from 0 to 100. Every time, who here takes on New Year's resolutions? Okay? How long until you don't keep them? January 3rd. So don't go from 0 to 100. Go from 0 to 1. If you're at 10, go from 10 to 11. Take one thing that you could do that would be some improvement. And the third thing I would tell you to do, one thing that Victor Miller had recommended. I'm saying this for American Jews. Victor Miller recommended that every day you should take a minute or two to think about the destruction of the temple. Take a second to think about it. I think there's got to be a way that we think for a moment about the entire Jewish nation. Because we're here. And it's really easy to go and to kind of like, you know, listen to the news. If I don't listen to the news, I won't think about it. If I don't listen to the news, it's not happening, right? No, it's happening. It's happening, okay? You know, I'm talking to my daughter, and she said, hey, what's wrong with the alarms, right? The sirens are going. So it's happening. It's happening. So therefore, I think we have to take also a moment to be what's called mitzvah tzar. Find a way to any way that you do it, to unify us with the greater Jewish people. To think about it, to learn about it, to do something that you're joining in and you're part of the greater whole and not separating. That's something that we need to do very importantly.
I want to just address the Helene's point, because there are a couple of us, or many of us over here who have kids who are literally on the front lines. You know, Kathy, our kids, whoever else. And I think that the way we get through this, and I think it's really important to do this, is to have a munah. You have to have faith. You can't sit worrying day and night, you know, thinking about it, you know, and worrying yourself to death, because A, it makes no difference, and B, you have to have munah. You have to say what is meant to be, will be, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's in Hashem's hand. And live with it, because that's the only way that you can handle it.
Well, you know, but again, just to qualify, and I agree with what you're saying 100%.
I'm not saying don't do the
Right. In other words, we still want to do, but that's what it says. Do not fear. That is emunah. That is emunah. And I want to tell you something. This is not me, man. I'm not making this up. The Talmud says that the prophet Habakkuk, later prophet, came along and said, I'm gonna boil down to you what you need at the end of time. And he said, Tzadik b'emunah so yechia. What you need at the end of time with this insanity around you is to have emunah, is to have trust in Hashem. You don't have that, you got a problem. You got a problem because you become crazy from everything you hear, and it's unending.
So the father of one of the boys that was kidnapped and killed, told a rabbi from the way shul in Far Rockaway, there was something that was written up that was very meaningful, that he said to this rabbi, we should all be sympathetic. We should all be full of joy. Even though things go on, he said the way of a Jew is to be full of sympathy. Now that's not an easy thing to do when everything's going on, but for a man who just lost his son like that, to say that to the rabbi, I felt was very, very telling, you know? And that's what we all have to do. We have to be...
I think it's very telling. And the only way you can do that is if, like I said, if you really, in a certain place, you're able to get into a place and say, listen, I trust it's going to be okay one way or another, then you could be enjoyed. Otherwise, you can't be enjoyed. But that's true. The dynamic with Jews are very strange. We have joy and we have awe, and we blend them both.
I mean, kind of right before the Tisha B'Av, but we're also right before the high holidays where we say Tefillah and stuff. So, you know, that's also, you know, like the magic formula, I guess, for when things are looking so, you know, like dire and you need to do something. So we're told, like, these are 3 things you can do.
Beautiful,
that's
right.
Shuvah,
Three things. The prayer we said, Shuvah, take on one thing, and I let that stuck with it. Give charity.
I think it's, I think what you say is good. You know, that we have to say that it's all going to work out okay. But I would like to suggest that it's not going to work out okay. It's going to work out fantastic.
Good.
It's going to be great.
That's right. That's right.
Attitude to get through this.
I agree. Do not fear, your time redemption has arrived. That's what it's saying. 100%. 100%. That's what it's saying. So I want to say Tehillim now about the situation. I want to say one psalm. And if people want, we can pass out some Sidurim. If you want to say it together, you repeat after me, say with me. However you want to do it. I'll give people a second. Anybody wants to page 152. If you want to say, let's say 1 or 2 psalms now.
Which psalm is it?
152.
Page 152 in the black books. Okay. 20. Okay. Those who know can say with me. I'll say it slowly if you want to follow there.
153.
Psalm 20. Got your phones?
Yeah.
What page is it? 220?
Page 152. Psalm 20, page 152. So Psalm 20, page 152. Actually, there's understand what they would say. The Tehillim is a Mishaberach for the say a blessing for the army. Just to know one thing, it's important. The idea of saying Tehillim is to bring God's presence, and then you may have to make your request afterwards. So we're going to say the Tehillim now, and then afterwards we say the Mishaberach. Afterwards we request to protect our soldiers. Page 152 in black. Okay, I'm reading Hebrew. Lametseya, Gizmor Elohi, Yadcho Adonai Yom Tzara, Yizagevcha Shem Elohei Yaakov, Yishlach Ezrecho Mikodesh, U'Mitzion Yisadecha, Yizkor kol minchosecha, kol asayim b'ashvischa. Yiten lecha hilvavecha, mechol asasayim alei. Nirana b'shvasecha, v'shem Eloheinu nidko. Yimaleh Adonai kol minchosecha. Atayati, Yoshia Adonai Mishiko, Yaneinu Shem Kadsho, Bigvuros Yishayim. Ele Barechem, Ele Basusim, V'anachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Naskir. Heima Koru V'Nafalu, V'anachnu Kamnu V'Nisodot. Adonai Hoshio, Amelech Laneinu, B'yom Kareinu. Yisrael, I was saying, Rabbi Ingber, Yivrech Eschayel Tzavah Adonai Yisrael, I'm strong, I was saying, V'arei Eloheinu, V'vulo Nun, Ad Yidbar Mitzrayim, Min Hayam, Agadol, Ad Lavo, Arava, V'yemasha, Avir V'yam, Ten Adonai Saveinu Kamim Aleinu Bigofi Lefneihem. Because Baruch Hu Yishmor V'Yatzil Eschayim Leinu Mikol Tzar V'Tzukah Mikol Nega V'Machala. V'Lach Baruch V'Atzlacha B'Chol Ma'asei Yideya. And Ber Son Einu Tachteya. Yater V'Yitrem B'Keser Yeshua V'Teres Nitzachon V'Kem Hem HaKatuv Ki Adonai Elohechem Melech Yimachem Lechem Lechem Ineveichem Yishia Etchem Nomar Amen. Amen. You blessed our forefathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. May He bless the fighting these defense force who stand guard over our land, the cities of our God, from the border of Lebanon to the desert of Egypt, and from the great sea onto the approach of our love, on the land, in the air, and on the sea. May Hashem cause the enemies who rise up against us to be struck down before them. May the Holy One, blessed be He, preserve and rescue our fighting men from every trouble and distress and from every plague and illness. And may He send blessing and success in their every endeavor. May He lead our enemies under their sway, and may He grant them salvation and crown them with victory. And may there be filled for them the verse, for as Hashem your God goes with you to battle your enemies, for you to save you. Now let us respond. Amen. Amen. Protect us all, Jewish people in Israel and around the world. Amen.